Let's just say you have taken this class relatively casually. You really haven't thought about grades or assignments. And upon hearing that next week will be our last week and the week after grades will be given, you come to my office and you ask if there is any way you can pass this class. And you bring up the concept of compassion and forgiveness. And like all human beings, you try to exploit me by being relatively emotional, giving me a story of sorts, that certain events have happened in your life that have kept you from really being engaged in the class and the ideas and assignments and all those things. So from one end, I've been a student. I know how it feels to be in life, to be engaged in different things, far more interesting than being in a classroom. I also know how it feels. I haven't forgotten what it means to be a student in ridiculous and absurd classrooms with teachers I didn't like. So as you tell me your story, I go back to my own experience as a student. And I say, yeah, well, Maria and I were not a good fit. She tried, but I failed her, or maybe she failed herself, or maybe she failed me. So my compassion for you grows, knowing full well how it feels to be a student in a classroom that is not very enjoyable. There's a branch that comes out of compassion, which is there are about 35, 40 students in the room. They all have busy lives. Maybe someone's mom passed. Maybe someone's dad got to be 60. And as a son, you knock on his door and say, Dad, let's go celebrate. We'll go have Zachary's pizza. And you realize he's sitting on the bed and he's sobbing because he's 60 and for some strange reason, it just makes him feel sad. Someone has come from a broken home. Someone is depressed. Someone is lonely. And then you say, okay, well, maybe someone who is depressed and lonely and sad, maybe they too wanted to come to my office because they haven't done any work for the class. But they're somewhat reserved, shy, embarrassed. Maybe they have too much self-respect, I don't really know. And instead of coming to the office and asking for an extension or if there's a way they can pass the class, they kind of look themselves in the mirror and say, I should go to his office, but I'm a bit embarrassed. So, well, I'll just retake a class next semester. And you realize that there is this branch called justice that comes out of compassion. I can feel sorry for you. I can feel bad for you. I can give you a great amount of understanding, both as a student, as a human being, as someone who has found themselves in an environment that's unpleasant, uninteresting. At the same time, I am left with, what do I do with 30 other students? They've also not done some work. Some are really trying hard to turn everything in the last week. Is it really just for you to come to my office, exploit me, manipulate me for perhaps the right reasons? I also have to consider the fact that, well, you're not 20 or you're not 25, you're almost 70. That unlike these young punks in this room, who have a lot of time ahead of them, you don't. And so I have to consider the fact that you are a bit older, and as you get older, you're a bit more clear as to what it is that you want, where it is that you're going, perhaps, not always. So I am left to kind of sit back and reflect. Should I cut her some slack because of her age? She thought that this class would be interesting, and as you get older, your questions are much more sharper, much more reflective. And I suppose as an instructor, I have failed her because she doesn't ask questions like a 20-year-old. She asks questions like a 40-year-old, a reflective 40-year-old. Who, very much like 20-year-olds, have had lots of hopes and dreams only to realize that life has only one function, to crush, like a bulldozer, every hope and dream that comes to the imaginations of human beings. So what do I do with that? I want to just give you an A, but there are lots of people in this room. I also have to consider the fact that human beings are slothful. They are lazy. Reflection is tough. No one really wants to sit down and think about things too deeply, because you have no idea where it's going to end up. You have these ridiculous people like Sam Harris and the rest of those people, young farts, who have these YouTube channels who want to prove to the rest of us that God doesn't exist. And those who believe in God are ridiculous and infantile. And the truth is, when you put everything under the scrutiny of reason and rationality, nothing can stand. Why do you get married? Why do you go to school? Why are you alive? Ask people relentlessly. And you realize that no one stands a chance if you happen to have a very sharp, razor-sharp intellect. Who cares if God exists or not? The truth is, human beings are just ridiculous, period. And that's one of the things that Socrates proved to us. The moment you want to define anything coherently, intelligent. You just failed. I want to be compassionate, but what do I do with the fact that maybe your life has been relatively easy, trouble-free for the most part, but you're just lazy, that thinking is tough. I also have to consider the fact how ridiculous the educational system is. No one can make the grass grow by pulling it. Okay, so I come to class and I say a few things, but the truth is you're only here for the grade. You're not here to understand. You're not here to examine, to reflect. And so this system is an imposition upon your psyche. It is unjust. It is unfair. And I impose upon you assignments I don't really care for. And then I have to issue a grade that could damage your future. And even if I did believe in the system, the next question that comes up is, what is a grade really? Is it not true that people learn slowly in time? You know, you get an A in the class and you fail the rest of life, or you fail this class and you're successful the rest of life. What if I just give you a grade, given the fact that you are slothful or lazy? Like the welfare system, it was first created to give people a hand. And then what the welfare system doesn't recognize is that human beings are habitual animals. You like things that come to you free without much work. You know, that's why we read. It's difficult to look at things, observe, examine, and just figure out the answer for yourself. That's what the school is all about. You have a question, there's an answer. You don't work for the answer. I can't even bring in the fact that you come from the American culture, which is poisonous and toxic to the human soul, if there is such a thing. So tell me what I should do with your grade. Which branch of compassion should I pursue? Should I just give you a grade and forget the rest of the people in this classroom who possibly could have difficult lives? Why would you even come to my office and ask for a grade when you do know that there are other people in this room who have it difficult? See, if I didn't care, I mean, if I wasn't aware of all the different branches, you're absolutely right. I would just give you a grade and just go move on. But, you know, I've talked to some students in this classroom and life for them has been difficult. What do I do with that? If I was to give you an A, you know, it's something that was talked about quite often when George Bush became the president and began the Iraq War. He didn't sound very intelligent when he spoke, and then a lot of people would say, only if his instructors at Princeton or Yale or Cambridge or wherever he went, if they have failed him, instead of just giving a C or a B or an A, he would be forced to kind of sit somewhere, read a couple of books, think, write good essays, and maybe he would have been a better president. When you look at the prison system, say in Norway versus America, so what you have is, let's say, my brother and I got into a fight, I grabbed the sharpest knife I can find, and I slit his throat. I love him. And so I get caught, and I'm sent to some prison. But my prison in Norway is actually quite nice. I have about 4 roommates in a nice little cottage filled with trees, and I go through rehab. And then when I'm released, I'm not a savage anymore. I'm much more reflective, much more decent. That's the punishment I get there. Here, on the other hand, you can't punish me by sending me to jail, but I come out far worse. So it's good to punish someone, but in a very educated way. You come home and you're angry because your kids haven't done their work, but your anger is not very educational. You impose fear in them, you kind of tarnish the little relationship you have with them, and that's not really healthy. If on the other hand, you scream, even spank them a little bit, and then after they do their work, you take them to Chuck E. Cheese pizza or you go out for a walk, it's something that balances things out. So when you talk about punishment, the question is, well, in what shape, in what form? What are the outcomes? I suppose if I was to go back to the analogy of you not having done work for this class, my punishment for you perhaps would be, let me give you an incomplete, which means you have till the rest of the summer to complete all the assignments. And instead of just writing 10 pages each assignment, your punishment is to write 20 pages for each. And that's about like 10 assignments. And that's about 200 pages. But you have about 3 months. And once you're done, I'll just give you an A. You may not like me, you may not like the work, but at least you'll get an A, and you will have done the work. That's a good anger, that's a good punishment. I understand that at your age, you don't want to come back to a philosophy class, sit here for another 16 weeks amongst ridiculous people who ask ridiculous infantile questions. I think all of us as human beings need to be punished. simply because we are born in the dark, and oftentimes we make decisions in the dark, and life pushes those consequences into our face, and you realize you've just gone wrong. Regret is part of life, loss is part of life. You just need the tools to combat them.